I didn't mean to get the alien queen pregnant. But she's overjoyed. HFY Adam had always been a curious man, someone who had spent most of his life traveling from one planet to the next, uncovering mysteries and solving diplomatic challenges. As a seasoned space explorer, he had learned to expect the unexpected, but nothing in his career had prepared him for what happened when he arrived on the distant planet of Elysia. The mission had seemed straightforward enough. Elysia was a remote, isolated world, home to a powerful but secretive alien race, the Drakel. They were an ancient species with a rich culture, one that had developed in complete isolation for centuries. The Drakel were known for their impressive technological advancements, but also their reluctance to engage with other galactic civilizations. Adam's role was simple: to make contact and open the door for future diplomatic relations. What he didn't know was that his arrival would change everything. Upon landing, Adam was escorted by an emissary to the capital city, where he would meet with Queen Zalara, the ruler of the Drakel. Zalara was a figure of legend in the galaxy. Her power was unrivaled among her people, and she had ruled for decades. Stories spoke of her beauty, intelligence, and unyielding will to protect her kingdom. Adam had seen portraits of her, but none of them did justice to the real thing. The palace was unlike anything Adam had ever seen. Towering structures made of dark stone stretched high into the sky, their jagged edges gleaming in the harsh light of the twin suns. The air was thick with the scent of alien plants, and the sound of strange creatures echoed through the streets. As Adam walked through the city, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, but it wasn't a threatening sensation. It was as if the city itself was alive, aware of his presence. When Adam finally stood before Queen Zalara, he was struck by her presence. She wasn't just a queen, she was a force of nature. Her eyes were an intense shade of violet, and her long, silver hair cascaded down her back like liquid metal. She was tall, even by Drakel standards, and her graceful movements made it clear that she was both powerful and poised. Yet there was something in her eyes, something deep and sorrowful, that caught Adam off guard. It was a look he couldn't place, but it made him wonder what kind of ruler she really was. Their meeting was formal at first. Adam presented the usual diplomatic documents, outlining the benefits of a mutual alliance between Elysia and the Galactic Federation. Zalara listened intently, her eyes never leaving him, her expression unreadable. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was calm but carried an undeniable authority. "Your people have long sought to understand us, yet you remain outside our reach," she said. "What makes you think this will be different?" Adam wasn't sure how to answer. He had heard of the Drakel's refusal to interact with other species, their deep suspicion of outsiders. But something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely closed off to the idea. Maybe, just maybe, this meeting could be the beginning of something more. "I believe we have more in common than you think," Adam said, trying to sound confident. "We may be different, but at the core, all civilizations seek peace and prosperity. Together, we can achieve more." Zalara's eyes narrowed slightly as she studied him. "You speak with conviction, human, but words are cheap. What will you do to prove that your people are worthy of our trust?" Adam wasn't prepared for this kind of challenge, but in that moment, something inside him clicked. He realized that this wasn't just about formalities. Zalara wanted to see what kind of person he truly was. She wanted to see if he could back up his words with actions. Before he could respond, the room suddenly trembled. Adam's first instinct was to reach for his communicator, but it was already too late. The lights flickered and a loud, resonating hum filled the air. The walls of the palace seemed to shift as though they were alive. "What is happening?" Adam asked, his voice tense. Zalara remained calm, but there was a glint of worry in her eyes. "This is no ordinary occurrence. It is a ritual, one that has been performed for generations." Before Adam could question her further, a series of doors opened in the back of the room, revealing a strange and ancient device. It was a massive stone structure, covered in intricate symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. It was unlike anything Adam had ever seen, and he felt a sense of awe and fear rise within him. Zalara gestured for Adam to approach the device. "You must understand," she said. "This device is a key to our future. It has been passed down through the ages. Only once in a lifetime does it awaken, and when it does, it requires the presence of an outsider, someone not of our kind." Adam took a hesitant step forward, unsure of what he was about to do. But something in Zalara's eyes told him that this moment was more significant than anything he could have imagined. "What does it do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It tests the strength of our bloodline," Zalara replied. "It ensures that the future of our people will be secure." Before Adam could ask any more questions, the device hummed to life, a blinding light flashing from the center. The force of the energy surged through Adam's body, and he felt an intense heat course through him. The sensation was overwhelming, and he stumbled back, clutching his head. In that instant, something strange happened. The light intensified, and Adam felt an undeniable pull toward Zalara. Without thinking, he reached out, his hand brushing against hers. The moment their skin made contact, a shockwave of energy surged through the room, and everything went silent. Adam stood there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. Zalara's face was unreadable, but her eyes were wide with shock. She looked at him as though she had seen a ghost. What did I just do?" Adam whispered, his mind racing. "Was that a mistake?" Zalara remained silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on him. Then, slowly, a smile began to form on her lips, a smile that was filled with wonder and something else, something that made Adam's heart skip a beat. "You didn't make a mistake, human," she said softly. "You have just done something that will change the course of history." Adam's heart pounded in his chest as he stood in the aftermath of what he had just done. The room was eerily silent, the light from the ancient device slowly dimming, leaving only the quiet hum of machinery and the faint scent of something burning in the air. He stared at Queen Zalara, her face a mixture of awe and confusion. "What just happened?" Adam whispered, his voice hoarse. Zalara's gaze was intense, her violet eyes fixed on him as though she were trying to decipher something hidden within his soul. She stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with an unspoken tension, the weight of the moment hanging heavy over them. "You have awakened the old prophecy," Zalara said at last, her voice calm but laced with a note of disbelief. "Only once in a generation does the device choose an outsider. And you," she paused, taking a slow breath, "you are now part of something far greater than you could have ever imagined." Adam stood frozen, trying to process what she had said. An outsider, a prophecy, what did it all mean? He had come here simply to establish a diplomatic relationship between the Galactic Federation and the Draco, not to be involved in some ancient ritual or prophecy. But as he looked at Zalara's face, he could see that she wasn't lying. Whatever had just happened was real, and it was undeniable. Before Adam could voice his confusion, a sudden burst of energy crackled through the air, drawing his attention to the walls of the chamber. The ancient symbols on the stone pillars seemed to glow brighter, their light pulsating in rhythm with his racing heartbeat. Zalara turned her head toward the device, her expression unreadable. "Come with me," she said, her voice a little firmer now. "You must understand what you have just become part of." Adam hesitated, but the gravity in her tone compelled him to follow. He had no choice but to trust her for the time being. With a deep breath, he took a step forward, following Zalara through the palace halls. The long corridors were lined with strange, intricate tapestries that depicted scenes from Dracal history. Battles, alliances, moments of triumph and sorrow. It was clear that the Dracal were a proud, ancient people, and their past was as rich as it was complicated. As they walked, Adam noticed the intensity of the atmosphere around him. The palace, though beautiful, was filled with an undercurrent of tension. Guards stood at attention in every hallway, their eyes scanning him with suspicion. The quiet whispers of palace servants echoed in the distance, and Adam couldn't help but feel like he was the center of attention, though he didn't understand why. They entered a grand chamber at the heart of the palace, where an enormous, circular table was surrounded by high-ranking Dracal officials. Each of them was dressed in elaborate armor, their faces stern and unyielding. At the head of the table sat an older Dracal man with silver hair and a sharp gaze. His eyes flickered with surprise as Zalara entered, but he did not rise to greet her. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice cold and formal. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" Zalara stood tall, her presence commanding the room. "This is Adam, an outsider. He has just unknowingly participated in a ritual that has not been performed in centuries." Adam felt all eyes turn to him, and he shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't used to being the center of attention, let alone in such a tense situation. The older man, who Adam assumed was one of Zalara's closest advisors, raised an eyebrow. A human? He asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. Are you saying that this outsider is the one? Zalera nodded, her expression unwavering. Yes, he is the one. The device has chosen him. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Adam could feel the eyes of the Dracal officials on him, each one assessing him, sizing him up. He felt exposed, vulnerable, as though he had stepped into something far beyond his understanding. The man at the table, Zalera's advisor, it seemed, leaned forward, his expression hardening. This is preposterous. How can we trust someone who is not of our kind? What could he possibly offer us? Zalera's eyes narrowed, and for the first time a flicker of anger crossed her face. We have no choice. The prophecy is clear. The device has chosen him for a reason. We must embrace it or risk everything. Adam swallowed hard. He was still trying to grasp the full scope of the situation. A prophecy? A device that chose him. He had only come here to meet the Queen and complete a simple diplomatic mission, not to become part of some ancient legend. But here he was, standing before the most powerful people on Elysia, and they were looking to him for answers. The prophecy, Zalera continued, speaks of an outsider who will come to us in our time of greatest need. He will bear an heir, and that heir will be the key to the future of our people. The room erupted into murmurs, and Adam felt his face flush. He glanced at Zalera, hoping there was some mistake, but her gaze was steady. There was no sign of doubt in her eyes. So you're saying I'm supposed to have a child with you? Adam asked, the words barely escaping his mouth. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Zalera's expression softened, but only slightly. Yes, the child of an outsider and a Dracal will be unlike any other. It will carry the strength of both our bloodlines, and it will be the symbol of unity for our people. Adam felt a wave of confusion wash over him. But I'm just a human. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't. You did not choose this, Adam, Zalera interrupted, her voice calm but firm. But now that it has happened, you must understand that this child will change the future of Elysia. The forces that threaten us will not care for your confusion or hesitation. They will see this child as a symbol of power. Adam stared at her, still struggling to comprehend everything she was saying. He had always been a man of action, but this situation was something he had never encountered before. He had come here as a diplomat, not as the father of a child who would shape the future of an entire species. Are you saying that this child will be my responsibility? Adam asked, his voice low. Zalera met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. Yes, it will be your responsibility as much as it is mine. The future of Elysia depends on it. The weight of her words settled heavily on Adam's shoulders. He had never signed up for anything like this. He wasn't prepared to be a father, let alone a father to the child of an alien queen, but he couldn't deny the gravity of the situation. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Why me? He asked quietly. Why did the device choose me? Zalera's expression softened, but there was still a hint of sadness in her eyes. The prophecy speaks of an outsider who will unite the two halves of our world. Our people have been fractured for centuries, torn between tradition and progress. You are the bridge between those worlds. Your presence here is a sign that change is coming. Adam looked around the room, taking in the faces of the Dracal officials. They seemed divided, unsure of how to react. Some appeared angry, others fearful, but all of them were waiting for Zalera to take control of the situation. This is not just about us, Zalera continued, her voice firm. It is about our people, our future. If we do not embrace this child and the union it represents, we will fall into chaos. Adam felt a surge of determination rise within him. He didn't understand all of it, but he knew one thing: he couldn't back down, not now. He had a responsibility, not just to Zalera, but to the future of the Dracal people. He couldn't let fear or uncertainty dictate his actions. I'll do what I can, Adam said, his voice steady. But I need you to understand I didn't choose this. I don't know what the future holds, but I won't let anyone else suffer because of it. Zalera nodded, her expression softening. I understand, Adam, and I will stand with you. Together, we will ensure that this prophecy comes to fruition. Adam didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change. The weight of what Adam had just learned pressed down on him like a stone. Standing in the heart of Elysia's palace, surrounded by a room full of powerful Dracal officials, he couldn't help but feel like a stranger in a world that was both ancient and unfamiliar. Queen Zalera had made it clear. He was now part of something that would affect the future of her people. He was to be the father of an heir who could unite two warring factions within Elysia, a child who would carry the power of both human and Dracal bloodlines. As they walked out of the grand chamber, the tension in the air was palpable. Zalara's presence, once so commanding and regal, now seemed burdened with the weight of responsibility. Adam, on the other hand, was still trying to wrap his mind around the situation. He was a space explorer, a diplomat, not a political pawn or a father-to-be. But here he was, caught in the middle of an ancient prophecy, thrust into a role he had never asked for and didn't fully understand. Zalara led him through the winding corridors of the palace. The halls were lined with statues of past rulers, their stern faces carved into the stone as if watching over the future of the Dracal people. Each one seemed to tell a story, a history of triumphs and defeats, alliances and betrayals. Adam couldn't help but wonder what kind of ruler Zalara's ancestors had been, if they had ever faced a challenge like the one she was now dealing with. They stopped in front of a large door, decorated with intricate symbols that Adam recognized as part of the Dracal language. Zalara turned to him, her face set in an expression of determination. "You must understand, Adam," she said, her voice steady. "What is about to happen will change everything. There are those who will resist this union. There are factions within our people who have long opposed any form of change." Adam nodded, though he still felt like he was in over his head. "What are we supposed to do about it? How do we make this work when there are people who don't want it?" Zalara's gaze softened slightly. "We have no choice but to unite. The prophecy speaks of a child who will bring balance to our fractured world, but it also says that the path will not be easy. There will be resistance, both from within and from without." She opened the door and Adam followed her inside. The room was dimly lit, with tall windows that overlooked the city below. The view was breathtaking. Elysia's twin suns were setting on the horizon, casting an orange glow over the sprawling landscape. But the beauty of the scene did little to ease the tension that gnawed at Adam's gut. Inside, there was a large table where a group of Zalara's closest advisors were gathered. Their faces were grim, and Adam could see that the situation was more serious than he had initially realized. Zalara took her place at the head of the table, and Adam stood by her side, unsure of where he belonged in all of this. One of the advisors, a tall woman with sharp features and dark eyes, spoke first. "Your Majesty, we cannot afford to allow this outsider to dictate our future. We have traditions, laws that have guided us for centuries. And yet here we are, forced to accept a human as part of our royal bloodline." Zalara's expression hardened, and her voice, though calm, held an edge of warning. "You know as well as I do that the situation has changed. The device has chosen him. This is not a decision we can undo. We must work with it." The advisor's eyes flashed with anger. "And what of our people's sovereignty? What of our culture? Will we throw it all away for the sake of a prophecy?" Adam felt his heart race as the conversation spiraled into more heated exchanges. He had never been good at political debates, and he wasn't sure what role he was supposed to play here. It seemed like Zalara was the only one in the room who fully believed in what had happened. The others were divided, their doubts clear. He glanced at Zalara, who was standing tall and unwavering, her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. Her confidence seemed unshaken by the dissent around her, but Adam could see the flicker of frustration in her expression. It was clear that leading her people was not as simple as commanding them. There were deep-seated divisions that had existed for centuries, and Adam was now caught in the middle of them. "I know this is difficult," Zalara said, her voice cutting through the tension. "But we must move forward. The child will be the key to our future. This is the only way." Another advisor, an older man with graying hair, leaned forward, his face lined with worry. "Your Majesty, there are factions outside the palace that will not accept this. The Lurian clan, for example, has long opposed your rule. If they find out that this outsider is to be the father of your child, it will lead to chaos. There will be civil unrest." Zalara's eyes flashed with determination. "I have faced threats before. I will face them again." Adam stood there, listening to the conversation unfold. He couldn't believe how quickly his life had been turned upside down. He was just a man from Earth, caught in the middle of an alien political struggle, with a child on the way who could change the fate of an entire planet. He hadn't asked for any of this, but there was no going back now. "Then what do we do?" Adam finally spoke, his voice cutting through the room's tension. The advisors turned to him, their expressions a mix of surprise and wariness. He stood straighter, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "How do we handle this?" Zalara looked at him, her gaze softening. "We will need to unite the factions, Adam. We cannot fight them all at once. We must show them that the future of Elysia depends on this union." Adam nodded, though a part of him felt uncertain. He had never been part of something so monumental. He had never been a leader, never had to make decisions that could affect millions of lives. But now, that was exactly what he was being asked to do. The weight of it all was almost too much to bear. "The Lurian clan will not be easily swayed," the older man said. "They are stubborn, prideful. They believe in the old ways, the old traditions, and they will not accept an outsider in your bloodline." Zalara's face hardened again. "Then we will make them see that this is not a matter of bloodlines, but of survival. Elysia cannot continue on the path it is on. We are at the edge of destruction, torn apart by division and ancient grudges. The child will be the symbol of hope." Adam could see the fire in her eyes, the strength of her conviction. He had never seen anyone so determined, and it both frightened and inspired him. Zalara was not just a queen, she was a force, and he had been chosen to stand by her side in this fight. "We must act quickly," the older man said, his voice grave. "The Lurians are already stirring. If we do not act soon, we will lose them forever." Zalara nodded, her jaw set. "Then we will move forward with the plan. Adam, you will be at my side through all of this. We must show them that we are united, no matter the cost." Adam nodded, though doubt still lingered in his mind. How could he, a mere human, ever be part of something so massive? But as he looked at Zalara, he saw something that made him believe. It wasn't just her power, her beauty, or her position as queen. It was the way she carried herself, the way she believed in the future and the possibility of change. And maybe, just maybe, that belief could change everything. As they left the room, Adam couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them all. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and obstacles, but one thing was clear: there was no turning back. They had to move forward together. And whatever happened, Adam knew that the future of Elysia rested in their hands. The days that followed were filled with tension and uncertainty. Adam had always known that diplomacy was a delicate art, but he had never imagined it would involve navigating such a web of political intrigue. The threat of civil unrest hung over Elysia like a storm cloud, and Adam found himself caught between his role as an outsider and the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. Zalara's determination never wavered, but Adam could see the toll it was taking on her. The weight of ruling a fractured people was one thing, but now, with the prophecy unfolding, she was expected to be the beacon of hope for all of Elysia. Adam couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for her. She wasn't just a queen, she was a leader, and she would do whatever it took to protect her people. They spent hours in strategy sessions, planning how to unite the various factions of Elysia. The Lurian clan was their primary concern. They were the largest and most powerful group in the kingdom, and their disdain for Zalara's rule was well known. The Lurians had long held onto the old ways, and they viewed Zalara's rise to power as a betrayal of their traditions. To them, the idea of a human outsider becoming part of the royal bloodline was nothing short of sacrilege. "We must convince them that the future of Elysia depends on unity," Zalara had said more than once. "If they are allowed to divide us, we will fall. We cannot afford that." Adam had been thrown into this conflict, his role unclear. He wasn't a politician, nor was he a soldier. He was a human diplomat, someone who had spent his life solving problems in peaceful ways. But here, in the heart of a society on the brink of civil war, peace seemed like an impossible dream. The first meeting with the Lurians was set to take place in 2 days. Adam had been briefed on their customs and history, but nothing could have prepared him for what awaited them in the Lurian stronghold. It was a grand, ancient citadel perched high on a mountain overlooking the vast plains below. The Lurians believed in strength, honor, and tradition, and their citadel was a testament to their values. The stone walls were thick and imposing, adorned with banners that depicted their ancestral symbols. It was a far cry from the sleek, modern design of Zalara's palace, but it was clear that the Lurians were proud of their heritage. Zalara and Adam were escorted through the gates by a contingent of Lurian soldiers. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the sound of chanting echoed from the stone walls. The Lurian leader, Chieftain Verk, was waiting for them in the central hall, flanked by his most trusted advisors. Verk was a tall man with a powerful presence, his eyes sharp and calculating. His voice carried the weight of someone who had spent a lifetime commanding respect. "You are welcome here, Queen Zalara," Verk said, his voice cold but respectful. "Though I cannot say the same for your companion." Adam stood silently, his hands clasped behind his back. He could feel Verk's eyes on him, sizing him up. It was clear that the chieftain wasn't pleased by the presence of a human in the Lurian citadel. Adam had expected this, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Zalara stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "I bring him as a sign of unity, Verk. The child he carries with me will be the future of Elysia. Our people will be united by the strength of both our bloodlines." Verk's gaze flickered to Adam, then back to Zalara. "Unity?" he repeated, as though the word tasted foreign on his tongue. "You speak of unity, but you forget the price of that unity. There are those who will never accept this. There are those who will fight against it. And I will fight alongside them," Zalara replied, her voice unwavering. "But I cannot do this alone. I need your support, Verk. Elysia needs your support." Verk's eyes narrowed. "And why should I support a human? A creature from a distant world, one who has no place in our history, our traditions." Adam's heart raced. This was the moment that would determine the fate of Elysia. He had hoped that Zalara's strength and conviction would be enough to sway the Lurians, but the tension in the room told him that this would not be easy. "I did not ask for this," Adam said, his voice steady, though he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "But I will stand by Zalara because she believes in the future of Elysia. I may be human, but I am not blind. I see the potential for unity, and I see the destruction that division will bring. If we do not stand together, our world will tear itself apart." For a moment there was silence. Verk studied Adam closely, as though trying to gauge the sincerity of his words. Then, to Adam's surprise, the chieftain stepped forward, a slight smirk on his face. "Perhaps you are not as foolish as you look, human," Verk said, his voice low but not unkind. "But words are cheap. Actions speak louder." Adam didn't know what to say. He had expected resistance, but this was something else. The Lurians weren't just angry, they were testing him. Testing his resolve, testing whether he could truly stand beside Zalara and fight for her vision of a united Elysia. "I've never been one to shy away from a challenge," Adam said, his voice steady. "If it's a fight you want, I'll stand with Zalara. But I will not fight for the sake of pride. I will fight for the future, for our children." Zalara's eyes softened as she looked at Adam, and for the first time he saw a flicker of something more than the cold queen she had appeared to be. There was gratitude in her gaze, a recognition of the sacrifice Adam had already made. She knew that this was not easy for him. She knew that, in many ways, he was just as much a stranger to her world as she was to his. But in that moment, they were united in purpose. Verk's smirk faded and he nodded slowly. "Very well. I will give you the chance to prove yourselves. But know this, there will be no easy victory. If you want the Lurians to stand with you, you will have to earn our respect." The tension in the room began to ease, though Adam could sense that the battle was far from over. The Lurians might have given them a chance, but the real fight was just beginning. Adam knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. There were many more factions to convince, many more challenges to face. As they left the Lurian citadel, Adam walked beside Zalara, the weight of what had just transpired settling heavily on his shoulders. They had taken the first step toward uniting Elysia, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. He had come here as a diplomat, but now he was something more. He was a symbol of the change that Elysia desperately needed. "We have a long road ahead of us," Adam said, his voice quiet. Zalara nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yes, but we will face it together. You and I and our child will be the beginning of a new era." Adam looked at her, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and fear. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. He was no longer just a man from Earth. He was part of something much larger than himself, something that could change the fate of an entire world. And he was ready to fight for it. The sun was setting over the vast plains of Elysia, casting long shadows across the city as Adam and Zalara stood on the balcony of her palace. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of distant forests, but Adam's mind was far from the peaceful surroundings. The weight of everything they had been through, the political unrest, the fragile alliances, the constant struggle, hung heavily in the air. But today had been different. They had finally reached an agreement with the Lurian clan, the most powerful faction on Elysia. Zalara had managed to win over their chieftain, Verk, with her strength and vision for the future. It had taken everything they had, but the first step toward unity had been made. However, Adam knew that their work was far from over. There were still other factions to win over, still enemies to face, and still much uncertainty ahead. Yet as he stood next to Zalara, he realized something. For the first time since he had arrived on Elysia, he felt like he was part of something greater than himself. The fear that had once gripped him, the uncertainty of his place in this alien world, had slowly faded into the background. In its place was a growing sense of responsibility, a sense that the choices they made now would shape the future of an entire planet. "Do you ever wonder if it will be enough?" Adam asked, his voice low as he turned to Zalara. "I mean, no matter how hard we fight, there's always more to be done. There's always someone who doesn't believe." Zalara's violet eyes met his, her gaze unwavering. She had been through more than anyone could imagine, but she had never faltered. In her, Adam saw the strength of a true leader, someone willing to do whatever it took to protect her people. "Sometimes," she said softly, "I wonder if we will ever reach the point where everyone is united. There are so many who are set in their ways, so many who fear change. But I know one thing for sure, we can't let that stop us." Adam nodded, his heart swelling with admiration for her. He had been thrust into this world by chance, yet the more time he spent with Zalara, the more he realized that he had found something important here, something worth fighting for. "It's not just about us anymore, is it?" Adam said quietly. "It's about Elysia, it's about the future." Zalara's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "Yes, but it's also about you and me, about our child, our future." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Adam allowed himself to think about what that truly meant. He had never planned for any of this, but now, with the child growing inside Zalara, he could see a future that had seemed impossible just months before. He could see a world where humans and Drackle worked side by side, a world where the prophecy wasn't just a tale told by the elders, but a living, breathing reality. The child they were about to bring into the world would be a symbol of that unity. A child born of two worlds, destined to unite them. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the sound of footsteps behind them. Adam turned to see one of Zalara's advisors approaching, his face set in a serious expression. "Your Majesty," the advisor said, bowing slightly. "The leaders of the Vrosk faction have arrived. They are waiting in the council hall." Zalara's face hardened slightly, but she nodded. "Thank you. We will join them shortly." The Vrosk were the last faction to remain opposed to Zalara's rule, and their resistance had been the most vocal. Unlike the Lurians, who had been skeptical but willing to listen, the Vrosk were radicals. They believed in the old ways, ways that were deeply entrenched in violence and distrust. To them, Zalara's rise to power was an affront to everything they had fought for. Zalara turned to Adam, her gaze steady but filled with determination. "This will not be easy. The Vrosk will challenge everything we've done so far, but we must face them if we want true unity." Adam took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about words anymore. The Vrosk were not interested in negotiations or promises. They were warriors and they respected power above all else. "We'll face them together," Adam said, his voice strong. "We've come this far, we can do this." Zalara gave him a grateful look, and together they made their way to the council hall. When they entered the room, the atmosphere was tense. The Vrosk leaders were seated at the far end of the long table, their expressions hard as stone. They wore dark armor, their eyes narrowed in distrust as Zalara and Adam approached. The leader of the Vrosk, General Kresh, stood to greet them, his towering figure casting a long shadow. "Queen Zalara," Kresh said, his voice cold. "And your human companion." Adam could feel the weight of Kresh's words. The Vrosk would never accept him, not as an equal. To them, he was an outsider, a symbol of everything they feared. "You are the last obstacle," Zalara said, her voice steady. "But I believe we can still find a way to unite. We are all Drackle, regardless of our bloodline. Our future lies in unity, not division." Kresh's lips curled into a tight smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You speak of unity, but unity requires trust, and we do not trust him." Zalara did not flinch. "I do not ask for your trust, General. I ask for your cooperation. If we are to survive, we must work together. The galaxy is watching us. We are stronger united." Kresh's eyes flickered briefly to Adam, then back to Zalara. "The galaxy may watch, but it is here that we must fight. The Vrosk have fought for centuries to protect our people. We will not surrender to outsiders. Zalera's expression softened, but only slightly. I do not ask you to surrender, General. I ask you to see the bigger picture. This child, my child, will bring us together. We are at a crossroads, and the choice is ours. We can continue to fight each other, or we can move forward and build a future together. Kresh's gaze hardened, but Adam could see the doubt in his eyes. The Vrosk were a proud people, and pride often clouded judgment. Adam knew that if they could make Kresh see the truth, they might have a chance. I am no warrior, Adam said, stepping forward. But I've seen enough to know that fighting is not the only way. The future doesn't have to be a battlefield. It can be a future where all of us are stronger together. There was a long silence as Kresh studied him, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You may be right, Kresh said slowly, but actions speak louder than words. Prove to us that this is more than a dream, Queen Zalera. Prove that this union is worth the price. Zalera nodded. I will prove it, not with words but with action. The meeting continued, the tension thick in the air, but Adam could feel the shift. The Vrosk weren't won over yet, but the seed of doubt had been planted. Zalera's vision was beginning to take root. The road ahead would be long, and they would face many more challenges, but Adam knew that this was the turning point. The Vrosk may not have agreed to full cooperation yet, but the possibility was there. And with each step they took, that possibility grew stronger. When the meeting finally ended, Zalera turned to Adam, her expression serious but hopeful. This is just the beginning, she said softly. We have a long way to go, but together we can build a future, for our child, for Elysia. Adam nodded, his heart swelling with both pride and uncertainty. He had never imagined that his life would lead him to this point, to be part of an alien prophecy, to help shape the future of an entire world. But as he looked at Zalera, he realized that no matter how uncertain the road ahead might be, they would face it together. And for the first time since he had arrived on Elysia, Adam believed that the future was not just a dream. It was something they could achieve.